Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who process grief by sleeping with their dead coworker's wife. Each week we spin the wheel and land on a different genre. Spies, mysteries, horror, romance, SF, it's all on the shelf. And right now we are reading mystery novels.
That's right. Now we're reading The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, Farewell, My Lovely by Raymond Chandler, Vengeance is Mine by Mickey Spillane, and A Murder of Quality by John le Carré.
So this episode, we are going to be covering Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon. I'm Zach, and this week I am really interested in thinking about this book through the lens of one of those random quotes you hear floating around the internet, that Maltese Falcon is not a detective novel. It is a novel about a detective. And Bob, I want to talk to you about whether you can see it through that lens, whether it's, as many people say, a quintessential example of genre, or whether it's more a quintessential example of character.
Oh, I'm Bob. I'm interested in the big differences between this and Golden Age detective fiction, especially looking at Poirot when we read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd last time, and how is he different from Sam Spade? Zach, we got to come back to the genre issue because I want to come in swinging. I think Sam Spade is evil.
Evil.
What do you say to that?
Okay. All right. My first thought was, ooh, hot take. But actually, I think maybe I'm just going to say I agree with you for 98% of this novel, or at least I'm not quite sure. Tell me about it.
2%.
Why do you think he's evil? Why do you rest on Team Evil? Team E.
Well, Team Evil, you know me, I'm on Team Evil. Sam Spade. So Poirot comes in. He is coming in to put the world in order. He wants everyone to live their best life. He wants the criminal to go to jail, get what they deserve, but he also cares about them. He wants everything to be on the side of justice and also on the side of goodness. He puts things where they belong. But I think Sam Spade, he's in it for himself. He colludes with Gutman. He makes deals with people. He lies. He doesn't care that his partner is killed. And then I think he just sells Bridget O'Shaughnessy down the river. Waves her goodbye. I think, what is the last chapter called? If you don't hang, call me. Like if she's not hanged by the state.
Yeah.
What is?
Yeah.
Yes. Whoa.
Well, I want to just say, I feel like your characterization of Hercule Poirot isn't just him. It's not just the fact that we read him last episode. It's that this is really the golden age detective, right? There's someone from outside of the society, someone from outside of the milieu of the characters who are involved in this crime, but they always seem to represent some kind of justice. You know what I mean? They are the person who's there to set things right. But our first introduction to this character, Sam Spade, this new kind of detective, or at least Hammett really wants us to know that he's a new kind of detective because he describes him as a blonde Satan. He describes him in these really animalistic and angular words to describe his physicality, but then also his emotional state is almost a mystery to us. One of the first things we learn about him in the early chapters is his partner has just been shot and dies. And the first thing he does is he rolls a cigarette. The second thing he does is he tells his secretary, paint over his name on the doorway. And then the third thing he does is reveal that he's been sleeping with the guy's wife. It is such a roller coaster that for me, I was shocked. You know what I mean? Not like shocked that it could exist. Not outraged by the morals of the character, but outraged that the author came out swinging with this kind of confusing messaging.
It's confusing messaging. He's so badass, though. We just lifted off some terrible things that he does, but go into your secretary and say, yeah, take his name off the door. It's just me in town now, baby. It's kind of, he's cute, cool as a cucumber. And, when he loses his cool, I think it's acting. And Humphrey Bogart in the third movie, they made two movies. One is not actually called Maltese Falcon. And then the third one's the actual good one, which has become the staple and kind of the definitive movie for moving forward with hard-boiled movies or the film noir. That one is super badass. Everything that Humphrey Bogart does is the coolest thing you have ever seen. And I think that is attractive about Sam Spade, even though he totally sells Bridget O'Shaughnessy, who's going to sell him down the river too. Selling her for a quarter down the... So she is maybe a femme fatale. We got to look at that. But in this last act, I think that is the moment where I'm like, oh... I know he's playing it for himself. He's trying to stay alive in a dirty, nasty city known as Spokane or Seattle or wherever they are.
San Francisco. This is something I want to talk to you about. They're in San Francisco, right. Yeah.
The other skeezier guys are from Spokane. That's right. Sorry. So they're in San Francisco, and he's just trying to survive in the mean streets. But that was bad. I feel like that moment with Bridget. What do you think? Their moment, their romance in it, is it real romance, or are they both trying to sell each other out?
That's a really good question. What to make of their romance? Because there's a sense in which what you said before about him kind of acting, him kind of performing, getting angry. I feel like he does the same thing with love, but it's so hard to tell because I feel like Bridget O'Shaughnessy really only reveals through successive actions that she's lying to everyone. And just when you think she's giving you the truth, it's just another lie. It's just another step further down the lie, or she's betrayed the characters in some way or another. We slowly realize that for Bridget, she is pretending to have this romance. And it's only later that we might think, wait a minute, maybe she does sincerely feel something for Sam Spade. For Spade's character, I got the feeling the whole time that he sincerely felt something for her until the first test of that happened. And I realized that he is water in the situation. He becomes the person he needs to be in order to further the plot line. So let me just say the moment that it all kind of came crashing down for me and for Bridget, and I think for everyone rightfully so, is the scene at the very end when he has them all at gunpoint and they're waiting for the return of the Falcon at the end. And Casper Gutman hands him the envelope, but he says, oh, it's missing one of the $1,000 bills. And he says, Bridget O'Shaughnessy, he basically accuses Bridget of taking it, takes her to the bathroom, and has her take off all of her clothes. And the horror that she feels and the coldness that he displays flips any prior precedent that had been set on the kind of emotional basis of their relationship. I don't know. What did that scene do for you?
That's a very interesting scene because she is also upset at... So Bridget is angry at Sam Spade, the shovel man, because he would even accuse her of doing that. And it's kind of... I mean, she knows that she's been lying to him the whole time, and he knows that she's been lying to him the whole time. So it's that he's calling her act out. I mean, obviously her character deserves to be criticized, and she knows that, but she is still acting, and she's trying to preserve that act. But their love kind of reflects that too. In that final scene, that final chapter, when he says, look, I know that you killed Archer. I know that it wasn't Thursby. You killed him, and you are the culprit of this murder. She says, no, that couldn't have been me. Finally, she admits to it, but then she says, "You're not going to turn me in, are you? I thought you were joking. I thought this was all a funny thing. You said you loved me. They've already had a night together. She has, like a femme fatale, I guess, in these noirs, convinced him to be totally on her side. But then she is willing to double cross him, or as he says, make him the sap. And he says, I'm not going to do that. I will forgive you after you serve time if they don't hang you. And when you come back, maybe we can be together." She says, "Well, I thought you loved me." And he says, "I thought I did too. And I don't think that matters that much. I know that I'll get over it." So he is cool, hard, and just, his name, Sam Spade, is the shovel. And I guess the way I think about him is almost like an undertaker. He undertakes to take you under. But then he also is digging all of this stuff up like a good gumshoe should. But I think he can also bury himself, bury his heart when he needs to, bury his relationships when he needs to. His partner dies. I don't care. Paint my name over it. The love of his life, who turns out to be someone who might double cross him or who does betray him, is going to be hanged. Who cares? Bury it. He is someone who buries the dead and moves on. Kind of interesting, kind of not appealing.
Yeah. Okay, so I like a lot what you're saying with, the shovel, the spade, that kind of image and him kind of burying people, but you also said something about uncovering. And one of the things that I've been really thinking about, or I guess that this book was a prompt for reflection for me, was how all these Golden Age detective stories that we've read, they start with a murder. Or if they don't start with the murder, the murder happens and we know what the crime is. This book also starts with a murder, but it's not the crime. You know what I mean? Like the book is called The Maltese Falcon. It starts with the murder, but the murder isn't really the point. It's this bird. And it feels like he's digging, like to get back to the shovel metaphor, he has to dig to find out what the crime even is. Like we don't know what the mystery is. We don't even hear the word Maltese Falcon until, half or even 3/4 of the way through the book. He has to uncover the conspiracy. It's a very different conception of what a crime novel even is. If that makes sense.
It's a great image, that Maltese Falcon, because they've been talking about it. It's got hundreds of years of history. It was the Knights of Malta who had to give it to the King of Spain. Someone stole it from the King of Spain. Someone else stole it. Then when they get it, it's just lead.
Yeah.
The image is Gutman taking out his pocket knife and digging in to the Maltese Falcon. And then you find out, it's all fake. Maybe it exists somewhere else, but this thing that has been promised to be encrusted in jewels and in 1929 is worth, at minimum, was it $2 million? I don't even know how much that would be. That has to be like, tens of millions of dollars at this point. So it's extremely valuable. Then you dig in and it's just lead. I guess, does that feel like an adequate image maybe for Sam Spade? Someone who you dig in and then you just find that he, here's my question. Is he fake? Is he a hero? And is he even, is he a hero or is he a bad guy? We said, is he evil? But does he actually bring things into order like Hercule Poirot does? Does he really accomplish anything, or is he just covering things up, not digging up, but covering up?
I think he is a hero, but I think it takes us all the way to the end of the book to realize it. And I think that, we get subtle emotional signposts along the way that he is not a hero. Like the easiest example I would say is the reflection of him in other people. Now, most of the people in this book are of the criminal element. But the one really good person, I think, is Effie.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how Effie is so different than everyone else. Like, she'll constantly lecture Sam about doing the right thing. Like, Sam, you can't do that. You got to do this. Or like when confronted with violence in their lobby, her lip is trembling and she's emotionally distraught when Captain Jacoby is shot. She's the only character that I could think of that has any kind of like disturbance, any kind of emotional upheaval over the sight of violence and blood. Everyone else is just hardened and cynical and cruel. So with her as the foil, he seems like just another bad man. It's not until the very end when he turns in Bridget O'Shaughnessy that, even if he's not doing it 100% for the right reasons, he does do the right thing. And you realize that all along, this actually was about solving the murder of his partner. You know what I mean? She is the person who fired the gun that killed the person who died at the very beginning of the book. So in that sense, it's like you said before, is he doing an act? Is he acting? Is he playing? What is he? I feel like that's the moment the mask comes off and we see that he is the hero. He's done the right thing. Everything before was just kind of a stage show.
It feels like it is a stage show. It's posturing. It's all part of the act. She's been in an act to pretend to be innocent, and she's saying, "How could you turn me in? I can't believe it. I thought you promised me everything." He's been acting that he's this bad tough guy, but he does make sure justice prevails at the end. However, it's kind of coincidental because he did want what's his name, old friendly Wilmer, right? Wilmer Camp. He wants Wilmer Camp to take the fall, and he's willing to throw other people under the bus to cover his own ass, and so he can make a little bit more money. Like, to what degree is this an act, and then to what degree is it, it does turn out good for me to do it this way, and it's the legal thing to do.
I will say I read that scene with Wilmer differently at the start than I did at the end, because at the start I was like, oh, Sam Spade hates this kid. He hates him.
Yeah.
And like any chance he'll get to finally screw this kid over and win. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about justice. It's not about anything else. It's about a person to person power battle. And Sam Spade has to come out on top over this arrogant punk. That's how I read it at first. But towards the end, I was kind of realizing that it's not about the kid at all. What it's about is you're in a room full of people who are allies, but they're only allies out of convenience. And what he was trying to do right there was have them turn against each other. And I only realized that when he said, it doesn't have to be Wilmer. It could be Cairo. And suddenly Cairo reaches for a gun. You know what I mean? To me, it felt like it was Sam Spade, the brilliant tactician, rather than Sam Spade, the petty, animalistic creature of spite,
So he is the tactician. However, I think at the end, doesn't Wilmer also murder Gutman and Cairo? So when he gets them to turn on each other, it ends in more violence, whereas he could have maybe put a stop to this and turned them in. He stokes the violence, and then it just continues from there. So his name is not besmirched. His name is fine, but everyone else is either, hanged or murdered or now wanted for murder.
But let me ask you this. Even in Golden Age detection fiction, how often do the detectives actually turn people into the law? Like detectives are not police officers, I think, for a reason, because what they're after is not the enforcement of law. It's a kind of justice. It's an ethical right. How many books have we read that have ended with the denouement and the detective being like, here is the killer over here. This is the person who did it. And then they privately pull aside the killer and say, look, I can go to the police and you'll be behind bars tomorrow, or you could go take cyanide and,
Wait a minute. I think that's a special case. That's the murder of Roger Ackroyd. I think maybe there are other ones. However,
we've seen it's in Sherlock Holmes. I believe Sherlock Holmes too, but I have seen this. This is a thing.
Okay, maybe it's a thing. I think more often the police will get involved because they have already been involved. They come to investigate, and they happen to be there at the time of the denouement. I think Roger Ackroyd is special, where there's a narrator who is the killer, and it's such a close, confidant relationship of the detective and the killer, then it becomes just a one-on-one, kind of like it's been a one-on-one between this narrator and the reader. But yeah, you could be right. Maybe these other Golden Age ones, they are kind of more, not vigilante justice, but community justice. I guess that's what happens in Murder on the Orient Express. The police are not involved because justice is higher than the police and then the legal code in that case.
It's about restoring the group back to a state of, I don't know, to where the hurt, the stain has been kind of wiped away. You know what I mean? And that doesn't have to be the person behind bars. It's just the people who are responsible for it are in some way accounted for. You know what I mean? To kind of use a kind of accounting terminology, they've incurred a debt by killing someone or by stealing some precious object, and now they need to pay for it. And it could be through jail time, or it could be through they all shoot each other at the end. But either way, the debt has been settled.
The debt has been settled and the threat has been neutralized. I guess the threats are neutralized in this too, but we don't know if Bridget is going to come back, and we don't know if Sam Spade, what he will really do, if he's going to be, well, who knows what his cases will be in the future, if they're going to be violent or not. But as you said, this story turns out to all be about a murder. We think that it's all about the Maltese Falcon, but it really comes to the murder. This is one of the first books where that idea of the MacGuffin, or it's like one of the MacGuffin books where it popularizes this idea, where everyone is going after this Maltese Falcon. We even have people who aren't telling us that's what they're doing, but for 3/4 of the book, we have no idea why these people are running around. And we find out it's all about this Maltese Falcon. Everyone's obsessed with it. The price keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher. We don't even know its exact history. It could be fake, but everyone is devoted to it, and that's what keeps the plot going. What do you think of this idea of the MacGuffin? Is it now when we use that term, it seems like it's a silly, lazy thing to do. What do you think? Is it silly and lazy in this book?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm tired of MacGuffins, but
okay.
But I recognize the point of them, if that makes sense. It's like the MacGuffin really moves the plot along in a way that I think that in the absence of a kind of golden age mystery, and a townhouse in rural England where it's all just people locked together, or a train, the Orient Express, in the absence of a kind of closed room, what you need is something else that can really drive the plot. And I think that what the MacGuffin is great at is, instead of becoming more and more withdrawn into the interior lives of every character in there, it actually opens up the story. It allows them to go to new places. The history of the MacGuffin allows you to bring in, all kinds of historical lore, secret societies, Knights Templars, German officers. You know what I mean? Like it makes the story feel global in a way that, to me, like, I feel like the feeling of this book is the seed for not only the thriller novel, but also the kind of historical mystery like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code and things like that. What do you think of the MacGuffin? Does it do it for you?
I was loving it. I was definitely thinking Da Vinci Code. That's got to go on our list very soon. Just haven't read it, but I would love to. I think the MacGuffin is quite cool here, and it is interesting how it's global. It's like a guiding light. Everyone must follow the MacGuffin, and the reader is also kind of willing to follow the MacGuffin. As soon as that history came in, I thought that was, it's a bunch of baloney, but it's great. It's really interesting baloney. And yeah, you can open up a room, and I think that it would be kind of unreasonable to just have characters going back and forth to different places again and again, just to go and pick on each other or to go and avenge each other. But it's interesting when they're all trying to get something out of it, and they are willing to cooperate. They're also willing to backstab, and these relationships form that are never on solid ground. I think that's a really interesting thing in this book, and I expect we'll see it. We kind of see it in Golden Age detective fiction, because different red herrings and different suspects are willing to watch each other's backs, not say certain things to incriminate each other. This is different, though, where it is, okay, I'm going to watch whoever has the most power in this situation, whoever can help me get closer to what I need, and I will align with them until I am ready. I am ready to betray them at the drop of the hat, get their gun and point it back at them. I think it's so interesting to watch Joel Cairo, Gutman, and Spade all in the same room, and then old Wilmer, and just trying to see who is going to come out on top in this minute. And I think one great scene is when Gutman is telling this whole story about the MacGuffin, and he's telling how it's been through so many different hands. And then Sam Spade starts to say, yeah, that's a really great story. That's really interesting, Gutman. And he just blacks out because Gutman has dropped him a roofie.
Yeah.
He thinks, okay, we've made a deal. I'm going to work for Gutman. I'm going to help him get this thing. And then he passes out. He's been betrayed and didn't even realize it. What do you think about all of this? You're never safe in this world.
You're never safe. You never know who anyone is or what they're really thinking. Part of that feeling also comes from the style of narration, which is something I'm actually surprised we haven't talked about yet, in that this is a third-person narration with no interiority. And I think the fact that the narrator doesn't know what's going on inside of anyone's head not only essentially creates the mood here, but it creates that paranoid feeling, that shifting feeling. Raymond Chandler, who we read previously in The Big Sleep, last time we did mysteries, I believe, he has a very similar style to Hammett, famously. But his characters, is told through first person. So the feeling that you get through a Chandler novel is through the voice of the detective, that voice being projected out into this world. And they're giving you this kind of heightened, high contrast, very poetic view of a fallen society. But here, there's no first person view of the world. There's just this narrator that's kind of given the facts as they are and using colorful, playful language. Sure. But because you don't know if anyone is actually who they say they are, and you don't know how to read their bodies, you don't know how to read their emotions through, when he rolls a cigarette, you don't know what he's feeling. And he rolls 3 different cigarettes and he's feeling 3 different things, I'm sure. You know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like the narration is doing so much work here.
And I think we can see that in the way that Sam Spade works as a detective almost too. It's different from Poirot, whereas, it's usually Hastings narrating those books. And Hastings will tell you what he thinks is going on. It's always wrong. But he always asks Poirot enough, so Poirot speaks directly to the reader. It's to Hastings, but directly to the reader what he's thinking to a degree. Here, Spade doesn't really tell us what he's thinking. And the way that he interacts with people is threatening them, picking them up and taking their guns, socking them, or making deals with them. But it's so much more physical than it is in those Poirot novels, in the Golden Age detective novel, where there is even though someone's been murdered, there's almost like a certain level of decency that everyone expects of one another. Yeah. So there aren't going to be any fights. Occasionally there's fights in some of those, but this is fight after fight after fight, gun after gun after gun. I think the physicality of this is quite interesting, where it's not, I'm going to break down what I know about this for you. It's a scene of, okay, now Sam Spade is on the ground. Next, Sam Spade has the guns. It's interesting to see him solve this a lot with his body. It seems very different. It's not just the mind, it's also how much you're willing to risk your neck and how hard you can hit.
And I think it plays into it that we get more descriptions of Sam Spade's physicality than we do any other detective that we've encountered before. Part of me wonders whether this is like, a differing weapons culture between the UK. Most of these Golden Age people we've read before have been UK. So, no guns in the UK, but lots of guns in the United States. And I wonder if that kind of reflects itself in the detective fiction that people are writing.
Well, here I've got a question. It could be a gun thing, but I'm wondering too, when we read Sherlock Holmes, we noticed that it's kind of an adventure. It's not just a detective novel. It's quite a bit different from the Poe stories where you have Dupin, I think, where Dupin is all logic, explaining exactly how he came to these conclusions. There's no fighting. Sherlock Holmes is boxing. He shoots a gun. He is always, he gets thrown off a waterfall. It's a lot of physicality. And I feel like when the Golden Age came out, he does cocaine, just plunging at it. But I think there was a physicality and an adventure to that is not in the Golden Age as much, where it is contained. Like you said earlier, it's on a train or it's in the manor house. Everyone's stuck together. It's on an island and the ferry can't come. But I think here we took half of Sherlock Holmes, cut it in half, and then just said, okay, we're only doing the traditional puzzle box where it's Sherlock Holmes telling you what evidence he finds, and then it leads us to the denouement. But now it feels like, no, we want that physicality back, and it is back to an adventure. However, what do you think? This comes out only 3 years after the murder of Roger Ackroyd. However, Big Sleep is 10 years after this book. Here, though, when we have Dashiell Hammett writing about Sam Spade, is it a lot cooler? I mean, is Sam Spade cooler than Poirot? That seems obvious. But is he cooler than Sherlock Holmes? And is that part of the attraction of, I want something not just like manly and fighting, that's not a good way to put it, not just manly and just duking it out. Is there something, like, is the cool factor a big part of this book?
That's a really good question. And I think that, the obvious answer is yes, like you said, but I think that the cool factor of this has to go back to the masculinity factor. And what you said, this kind of outline and this kind of branching tree that you gave, I think is really, really interesting and an idea that I'd like to explore more, because what you described about Sherlock Holmes is essentially Sherlock Holmes, the adventure novel character, like that aspect to him. And I think it's not a coincidence that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote all those adventure books, the Professor Challenger series, for example. And he has all of these adventure characters. And I love the idea of British detective fiction kind of lopping off one branch of the Sherlock Holmes character, the intellectual aspect of it, the clue hunter aspect of it, and going in that direction. But yeah, the physical Sherlock Holmes being taken up again in the United States, the Sherlock Holmes who knows, this group of kids, the Baker Street Irregulars, and knows how to kind of fleece them for clues or like hire them out to do, surveillance work. That side of the detective, of the like detective archetype, takes root in the United States. And that's what we see there. And I feel like the cool, what you're talking about, the cool is an outcropping of the physical side of Holmes.
I think so. And, Sherlock Holmes is really cool. Maybe he's not as cool. That sounded really stupid. He's really cool. I think now when we think about him, maybe he's too overdone and we think, it's just, he's Sherlock. No shit, Sherlock. But yeah, I think back then, and I still think he's really cool. He's like the coolest dude ever. He can do everything. He's great at fighting. He's really tall. He's really good looking. Everyone loves him. He can solve any crime. He's the shit. But I think Sam Spade is too. And I wonder if that people just got, I love Agatha Christie, and I think she's a great writer. I was going to say another bad word, but maybe people got tired of Poirot as she did too, because he is always, a little bit holier than thou. Sherlock Holmes is too, but kind of in a cool way. But yeah. Poirot is always like, I used my little gray cells. Didn't you see it? It was obvious. People get tired of that. And I wonder if that is a part of it. Because Sam Spade, he figures out what happens, but nothing really falls back into place. It's just everyone.
Poirot is an elitist, right? I mean, and that part of that has to do with the mustache, the pretense of a well-groomed mustache. Also the fact that he's foreign, and it's not like foreign people are pretentious, but he's constantly talking down to the kind of rustic English people. Oh, you finally used those little gray cells. But in contrast to that, like, I don't think that Sherlock Holmes is pretentious. He may be opaque. We may not be able to follow him, but when he wants to let you in, Sherlock Holmes lets you in. And I'm actually really reminded of Raymond Chandler's idea that the hard-boiled detective is supposed to be the common man hero. And in that sense, I think this is another side of like the Sherlock Holmes family tree, the personality family tree that I think we can pinpoint with the hard-boiled hero. And I think we see it in Spade, and we also see it in Marlowe, and to another extent, Mike Hammer, and maybe Ross MacDonald when we get around to reading Ross MacDonald.
Here's what I want to do, Zach. Since we're coming up to Philip Marlowe soon, I'm so excited for Mickey Spillane again. Wow. What a roller coaster. But Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe, I think, are very different. Dashiell Hammett was a big influence on Raymond Chandler. Raymond Chandler really looked up to him and wanted to do what he's doing. He in that article, The Art of Murder, he says, look, Dashiell Hammett has really revolutionized this, and I want to be a part of it. But their characters are so different while also being very, very similar. They move the same. They smoke the same. They talk to people in the same way. But when we get more of that interiority, or more of a better impression of really who Philip Marlowe is, he seems like he's like a knight in shining armor, just kind of not in shining armor, just a bunch of old ratty clothes. Yeah. But he wants to do the right thing. And I feel like at the end, even though Sam Spade has let justice come forward and he's pushed it forward, he feels like he's celebrating because he himself has gotten off. That sounds a lot more sexual than I wanted it to be. He has not.
No, but I agree. He's a rat who managed to not get caught in the trap.
Yes.
And I
He's floating on a Coke bottle.
Yeah. Is that like a barrel, like a barrel full of water and dead rats? Is that the image I'm supposed to get? He's on a Coke bottle.
But the rats are much smaller, so they just need a Coke
Oh
bottle.
my God.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I agree with you 100%. He's not the knight. He's a common man hero, but he's not a knight. Yeah. And he seems to be just someone who's scraping by. I like that about him. I think I like Sam Spade more than I like Philip Marlowe. Not just in the characterization, but also the voice of these characters. Even though they're so obviously, the one is obviously lifted from the other. I guess I would be interested in hearing how you feel. We don't have any more Sam Spade to read. He shows up in short stories, but other Dashiell Hammett stories. How excited are you to go further into Dashiell Hammett in the future? Is he at the top of your reading list, or do you feel like you find maybe some of these other hard-boiled authors a bit more exciting for you personally?
I would love to read the Thin Man series with Nick and Nora Roberts. I've seen some of the movies, and they're drunk by 11. Then they just keep going from there. But I think in the introduction to this book, Dashiell Hammett talks about having come up with Sam Spade, and he says, so they have the same name, by the way, Samuel Dashiell Hammett and Samuel Spade. They have the same name, yeah. But he says, Spade has no original. He is a dream man in the sense that he is what most of the private detectives I worked with would like to have been, and in their cockier moments thought they approached. He's interesting. He is like the birth of this brand new kind of character. And if he's this dream man, he seems to define a lot of what we think of. I mean, that's, I think it's Humphrey Bogart's second big movie, and it's kind of the definitive role for Humphrey Bogart, and then he moves on from there. But it's also the big, when I think of a hard-boiled detective, I'm thinking of Sam Spade from this movie.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see, is Raymond Chandler's version a direct challenge to Sam Spade, giving him a certain morality, and he's trying to put things back in order in these mean streets? And what do the other detectives happen to? This is published in Black Mask, 1929. How many of these guys were anti-heroes, and how many were diamonds in the rough? Are you looking forward to more Dashiell Hammett?
I would love to get the collected Continental Op and then just read through them all. Do an episode per short story. I don't know if anyone would watch it, but I think that would be so much fun. Well, we're 2 down in this mystery series, and honestly, I couldn't be more optimistic. I loved the last book we read. I'm so happy we read this book. I want to get more into hard-boiled fiction, and my only regret is that we can't just read like 15 of these books at a time. But yeah, I'll talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.